Hi everyone, welcome to the new tutorial. This one's all about gestures, but not just any gestures. I'm going to show you how to do very energetic action poses using gestures. Now, if you're not quite sure what gestures are, it's basically the first step that you should be doing before any art at all. And basically it's super loose and rough lines that form flow, or they show really good movement. And without this step, your art can actually come across quite stiff and a bit boring. So this is what gestures is all about, trying to get, making things seem more alive and more pleasing to look at as well. You really want to have that energy. So over the years, I've come up with a technique or a method that really works, and I'm going to show you today. Gestures is less about anatomy and structure, and it's more about capturing that essence or the flow or the movement and getting that energy across as well. So I'm going to show you two examples here, one without motion lines and the other is going to be with motion lines. And if you're not quite sure what I mean about motion lines, well, here's a few examples. I've picked some poses, some really good poses. And what makes these good poses is the motion lines, or the motion that you might see in the character. So you see what I mean? It's really just like the angle or some strokes that you might just envision in a character. So you can obviously see in the female, that's a really good example there. Gambit here, he's just got a nice big one. And this is what's really making these poses just nice, You just get those really nice motion lines. And this is something to look for in poses, especially when you're choosing them. And eventually you'll understand how to adapt to that and put it into your own art. So as you can see, as I'm sketching along here, I didn't begin with any kind of lines or movement to help me. I'm just kind of winging it and just kind of drawing the border or the outside of a character, Like, it's still an okay pose and it looks alright. It's supposed to be someone running, but there's just no energy. The energy isn't there. So let's try again, and you can see I've just did a big strike through and I'm doing a bit of movement now, and I'm using that as a guide, and then I'm building on top of that, and now we have a lot more energy in the pose. We have that essence, we have a lot of all of that kind of stuff. We're going to get into this a lot deeper soon, but I really just wanted to kind of show that as an example of how you can have more energy using motion lines. You can get flow, and the other one you can kind of see it's a bit more stiff, a little bit more boring. I didn't have that kind of structure there with the initial setup. So yeah, alright, well, let's get into it and I'll go a little bit more in depth. So I've got a bit of a reference here, and yeah, that's really just for a bit of a spark, a bit of inspiration. And as you can see, I really just throw lines in. It's not about getting any kind of accuracy or anatomy or any structure. This is all about getting that gesture, keeping things really loose and going from there. Now, like I said, so this actually, I'm not looking at this pose for the anatomy even. I'm actually just looking at the energy and the pose itself. I might even do a Venom. So I don't even think I'm going to do the right proportions of this guy. I'm going to give him nice big muscles like this and just see what comes out of it. I want to have like a big, see, I like the way that his neck kind of comes down there, and then I'll have, Venom's head maybe come out of there as well. So yeah, it could be anything. You can do whatever you want when it comes to these things. So it's always best to get some practice in. Just muck around with, like I'm doing right now, get a photo, and it doesn't even have to be the same proportions. You're just looking at the actual pose itself, and going from there. It's good practice. And if you're not happy with things, size them up, size it up, muck around with it until you're happy, make sure that you're happy with the movement and the way it's looking. So as you can see, it's super rough, really, really rough actually, but that's totally fine and normal. So something to keep in mind. And like I said, I've got this guy here, but this looks nothing like him. It's actually, I've just used it as inspiration. You can see the pose, a similar kind of pose, but it's not the same like proportions or anything. This is Venom. He's massive. He's bulky. So that's what I kind of recommend. You can just use poses for inspiration for that spark. So let's start with some photo reference. So I found this image here. This is just from wrestling, and I really like this pose. I think it's like a really energetic pose, and that's kind of what I'm going for today. So it's really good to use photo reference, but one of the things that I could recommend is to not copy like exactly what you see. So it's more about inspiration and getting that spark. So we're still going to do the same type of pose, but you know, what I like to do is kind of be a bit more free with it. When I was younger, I used to kind of think that I would just have to follow this exactly, like exactly where that shoulder is pointed and exactly where all these little muscles are showing. But as I've progressed through the years, and after everything I've learned through the industry with Marvel and so on, it's just too restricting doing it that way, and things can come across a bit too stiff. And this is where gestures come in. So what I'll do is I'm going to put that to the side as a bit of a guide. And then next to it, I'm going to start sketching. And what I'm looking at here is motion lines. That's the most important thing you can do. So like I said, we want to be completely free, as loose as possible. So what I'm seeing here is this big motion line through there. He's really kicking a leg out and even stretching an arm across there, okay? So they're the kind of lines that I'm seeing here. So we're going to try and do something similar. So I really like the movement in that line. And I'll even throw another line out where that leg's kind of supposed to come out a bit there. So that's kind of what I'm looking at there. And you can be really loose. None of this is about anatomy. None of it is about structure. All about being super loose with your work. All right, so I've got a basic kind of setup there. Now let's just continue and try and build it together. And sometimes sizing it down a bit can really help you as well. I feel like mine was just a bit too big for me to work on. And yeah, as I go, I sometimes like to make some adjustments. But you can already see I'm not really following it exactly. I'm just kind of doing my own thing, and this is just the spark that I need. This is the inspiration. As you can see, I'm trying to turn it into Wolverine now, just for a bit of fun. And then this is when I usually start suggesting anatomy. So I'll start kind of sketching in a couple of pieces of, just anatomy, muscles, and where they kind of belong a bit. Just a tiny bit of refining, but I still want to make sure it stays loose, just to get that that gesture. There we go, that'll do. So do you see how, you know, I'm not really following the photo reference exactly. I kind of just did my own thing. So that's very important to keep in mind as well. Just kind of, you know, you just need that little oomph. Something to suggest a pose. I decided to have that arm kind of aim upwards, for Wolverine, and this one too. Same with this leg. I kind of tucked that leg under. That was a style choice as well. So things like that, just think of different things that you want to do with your pose, and it's really your own. Now again, I just want to try and do a female pose this time. I think I might try and do like a Spider-Gwen, something, very dynamic and energetic. So again, what I'm going to do is I really want to just put like a big strike through, have some energy, like really just ripping across the screen. Really think of the motion lines and things like that. So I might do something like this. It's a little big for me right now. I like to work a bit smaller. And then I'll just start trying to fill in some, if I have a torso, maybe here. I find that sometimes it's very helpful to think of things in a pose that you're doing that stand out the most. So aim for those things first. So I like to think of this leg here pointing out this way, like really reefing across. And then I really want to focus on this arm that's pulling all the way back as well. So I want these two things to go in total different directions. And I really think that'll help me in a big way. And now I'm going to try something because I'm kind of happy with the gesture so far, but I really want to try and add some absolutely crazy foreshortening to it. So let's just see what we can get if I do that. There we go, so maybe something like that. I might just see what happens if I size this foot up a lot. Yeah, there we go. So something like that might work. And again, things to keep in mind are the motion that I've chosen. So I wanted to do a very energetic pose, so I went with that. And I really wanted to focus on those two things first. And that really helped me a lot. And then I thought of the spine that was going to probably come down that way. So having motion lines like this is everything. It's absolutely everything. So the flow, I'm following the flow of those lines. I've really got the knee and the leg is the main focus there, coming right at us. It also shows a bit of foreshortening. And then you've got this arm stretched right back. And that's just showing flow. Like it's almost like animated if you think about it. So if something was animated and it's really getting shot across the room, like a body or like someone's flinging across the room, you really want to make it that flow and you want to have that kind of energy coming across in just one single still frame. So that's kind of what I was going for there. So let's try something new. I'm going to do a standing pose or more of a grounded one, and I'll show you how you can actually add energy to poses like that. It doesn't have to necessarily be a leaping pose or something airborne that is in action. I'll show you how we can actually put it into a grounded pose. So I'm going to start with some energy lines. I really want to have a lot of motion in here. There we go. So I really like the kind of motion in that. So you can kind of see the flow now. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do carnage, I think. I might do a bit of a carnage pose. There we go. So what if it was something like that, So using those motion lines that I had, which were like that one down for the spine, and I was focusing on that leg mainly. Now these are like the main introductory lines that I wanted to put in first to help me guide me into the pose. It's like, it gives me that little nudge that I need to start the pose. So if you're ever struggling to think of something or an idea, try and think of a certain movement, something like whether it's a fist lunging around and it's like swooping around, and you really, focus on that fist movement, and then start building on that and have, it's a terrible fist. But, if you had that and then you keep adding to your pose after that. So it all starts with a big motion line, kind of like this. And then you've got the flow that you really want, Because after that was done, and I had these 3 strokes that I wanted, I added a couple of extra. So there's even a big motion line in that big blade. That's a massive one, and that's going to help the line kind of come right through. So that's definitely a huge motion line there through that blade. So there we go. That's a bit of a standing pose for you. I think the proportions or something's a little bit out of whack there with the leg, but I'll fix that up later. Can't seem to get enough of carnage in these tutorials, can I? So again, let's go something very dramatic this time. I'm thinking another one that's kind of shooting across the screen a little bit. So I want to go like, one thing that I really like to do when I'm doing my gestures is I really like to almost have like X's, so like crossing over each other, which will be limbs. So this will probably be a leg coming out this way. This could be the torso, kind of coming out that way. I also want to have an arm kind of shooting out this way as well. So that's just kind of how I really like to do these kind of things. So let me just see what we can do here. And like I said before, now that I know these, I've got these strokes and these motions, I really want to kind of focus on those areas. So what if I start on the leg? You know, I know that I'm going to have a leg there. So start on that as a focus point. Maybe I'll do the hip first. And by the way, always keep it super loose. Do you see how I'm really, really loose and rough with it? We're not trying to be clean here. The best thing that you can do is just be extra loose with your work. It doesn't matter how messy it is. Now, do you see how I just sized that? I resized everything. I just thought it was way out of whack for what I wanted. So that's okay. You can do that kind of stuff. Even if you are doing it on pencil and paper, just if you're not happy with the way it's kind of progressing, resize some things. You know, try something else out. And now that I've got it set up, I might actually turn this into Taskmaster, I think, from Marvel. There we go. I probably went a bit too far with the detail, but you know, you don't need to have any of this kind of sketchy stuff. I was just doing it for presentation, but I was definitely focusing on that and that kind of, you know how I like to cross my lines. You know, I definitely wanted to have that arm out there, so you can see how it's all crisscrossy. I really love to do that and have that direction. You know, if I have a straight line, I really love to have a limb or something coming out there. Have your poses spread out, you know. It makes them way more dynamic. And just by adding that flow, some motion, you really get that energy that you're after, rather than just having a static pose. So I'm going to continue on now and give you a few more examples just so you can see my approach and how I do a lot more movement using these motion lines. I highly recommend that you practice doing some gestures like this. Like, really put some time aside and focus on gestures and really get a feel for it. It's one of the most important things. Is like, really just do a whole sheet, just keep drawing and drawing and drawing. Do a bunch of different options. It can be from your imagination, or you can use some reference. I highly recommend it, because if you can really get honed in on gestures and get that feel of it, get the essence right, you will find that you'll be way more confident when it comes to tackling a full piece. So it's all about those motion lines, you know, really just having that energy in those lines, and then you're building on top of that. So it's really all about that. And then you build on top, and you are keeping it super rough. So you're not trying to refine things straight away. It's okay to go as loose and as rough as you want, because every little sketchy stroke that you make, that's your mind working. It's working its magic, and it's really trying to just get a bit of an idea of the overall kind of silhouette or body mass, you know. And by keeping those lines like really rough, like super sketchy and super rough, you're actually making everything seem more alive. So you're getting more of the gesture and less of that stiffness by making sure that you are sketching super rough, because the quicker you move your sketchy pen, the quicker you move it, the more movement it has. It's got flow and it's got movement, if that makes any sense. So when you're sketching around your character, you're adding a lot of movement and animated, like giving it that animated look. And then once you have all that and you've got all of your sketchy rough lines in, you're going to start refining after that, because then you actually will start to see a bit of a structure and how the character might look. But it'll have all that energy that you really want. Okay everyone, that's it for this tutorial. I hope you got a bit out of that with the gestures. That's a lot of fun. I love doing gestures. It's one of my favorite things to do. And like I said, this is probably one of the most important stages when doing your art, because getting the energy and the flow into your gestures, because then you're just building on top of that after, you know, all the good stuff comes later. You got the inks and all the refining and the colors. That's all later. But without the gestures and that nice movement and energy and flow, your picture, no matter how good the quality of your coloring or your inks, if you don't have this nice energy and flow, things can just turn flat and boring real quick. So this is definitely one of those really, really important stages. If you've got this, it's everything. So if you can combine really good gestures, the energy and the flow, with high quality details and inking and colors, that's all you need. Everything will be perfect, and you could be one of the best artists in the world. Okay, everyone, I think that's it for gestures. That's all I've really got to go through on that. I've lined up the next few tutorials as well. So we've got dynamic lighting will probably be next. And then we'll move on to magic elements and powers, you know, how to draw those kind of things. So those are the next few tutorials that we've got to look forward to, and yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into it. I think it'll be good. All right, everyone, thank you for watching again, and I'll see you next time.